Ladies and gentlemen, let's just be honest here. For decades now, the Democrats, well, they have relied on voter fraud across this country to maintain their power. They've been operating sanctuary states and sanctuary cities, as they call them, allowing illegal aliens to vote in our elections and embezzling, stealing tens of millions of dollars in federal taxpayer money to help facilitate this entire anti-American process. But, ladies and gentlemen, as it would seem, those days have now officially come to an end. You see, President Trump this morning has just gone scorched earth against all of this. Breaking news coming out. Take a look at this. Huge. President Trump has ousted the Democrat members of the Election Assistance Commission, citing the Supreme Court's recent decision allowing him to lay off federal employees with impunity, as the panel dragged its feet on Trump's non-citizen voting crackdown. Can you imagine that? The Election Assistance Commission, this federal body, staffed by federal employees, they have been doing every single thing they can to undermine President Trump's crackdown on non-citizen voting across the country. Well, and now Trump got rid of them. But folks, for a deeper dive here, for more of a, a little bit of a deeper report as to what really just happened here and why this is such a big deal, folks, take a look at this. Trump fires election commission members to help secure elections. Why did Trump do this? To ensure full alignment with securing America's elections and requiring U.S. citizenship documentation for voter registration. Makes sense to me. President Donald Trump exercised his executive authority to remove the remaining members of the Election Commission. President Trump ousted the two Democrat members of the Election Commission. Thomas Hicks and Benjamin Hovland are their names. Republican member, it was a commission of three, Christy McCormick resigned. She was probably a rhino if I had to take a guess. Former Republican Commissioner Donald Palmer left voluntarily earlier in the year. The four-seat commission now has no commissioners. All of them, as it would seem, were working to undermine President Trump. The Election Commission, created by the Bipartisan Help America Vote Act of 2002, signed by President George W. Bush, distributes federal grants to the states across the country. It oversees testing of voting systems and maintains the National Voter Registration Form, is what it is supposed to do. These members resisted President Trump's March 2025 executive order requiring documentation of U.S. citizenship on the National Voter Registration Form. The form had stated it is illegal to falsely claim citizenship, but did not require proof. A federal judge blocked the order as exceeding presidential authority, and the administration is now working through the appeals process. We have a statement from the White House. The White House confirmed all of this on Friday this morning. The official White House statement says this: the president and head of the executive branch reserves the right to remove individuals that may not be totally aligned with the important task of securing America's elections and ensuring every legal vote is properly counted. The Slaughter decision, the recent Supreme Court decision, gives the president precedence to do so. This was a 6-3 decision in the Supreme Court about a week and a half ago that affirmed the president's authority to fire members of independent federal agencies without cause under the Constitution's separation of powers. What are the strategic implications here? This constitutes the latest action in President Trump's push to reshape the U.S. voting process, ensuring that the election council leadership aligns with election integrity priorities, advances safeguards against fraud and abuse, of course. The timing of all of this supports Trump's strong infrastructure for the midterm elections. The White House added, the administration from the start has been working across all federal agencies and local partners to safeguard elections from fraud and abuse, and investing in strong infrastructure to sustain that mission, especially going into the midterms. Future nominations will follow presidential nomination and Senate confirmation, preserving the bipartisan and two structure of the council. This leadership decision prioritizes election integrity, citizenship verification, and voter registration, and counting only legal votes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, there's the big breakdown. So President Trump had a very basic idea. So why don't we actually ensure, let's make sure, let's be positive here that only American citizens who are properly registered, they have ID, we know who they are. Let's make sure that only those people are voting. Well, the leadership team here sitting on the election election commission, they said, no, we're not going to help you do that. Okay, you're fired. You're out of here. It really is not that complex. But folks, you want to talk about draining the swamp here for a moment or purging the deep state. In my opinion, this is exactly what that looks like. But actually, this here that we've just gotten done talking about isn't the only action or maneuver, the only thing that the Trump administration has been recently up to. In fact, I've got another massive election security integrity midterm related bombshell here I want to share with all of you. First, do me a favor, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, find us on Apple, iTunes, Spotify podcast, go drop a 5-star review, like, subscribe, do it all. Really appreciate the help. But ladies and gentlemen, take a look at this. We're talking about purging the deep state. Look at this. Bombshell numbers. The federal bureaucracy is completely collapsing under the Trump administration. The federal government workforce cratered by 18,000 jobs in March of 2026 alone. The federal workforce is now the lowest it has ever been since 1966, 60 years ago, after 14 straight months of rapid decline. So we're talking about draining the swamp. Okay, guys, we have the lowest federal workforce levels in the country in national history since 1966, 14 straight months of shrinkage in the federal workforce. And you can't help but notice, has the federal government stopped functioning? Like, is our country crumbling apart? No. In fact, everything is just moving along swimmingly. You wouldn't even notice really that we've had 14 straight months of federal decline, that we have the smallest federal workforce in 60 years. You wouldn't even notice. So it makes you realize, wow, the federal labor force was really sort of like a daycare program for a bunch of stupid adults. I hate to be rude here. But it was a bunch of DEI hires. It was a bunch of people that don't really need to be there. A lot of them were hired during the COVID era by the Biden administration, surged during the Biden administration. This was it was a federally taxpayer-funded daycare program for DEI adults, is what it was. And Trump said, get them out of here. Now, back to election security. We have a statement here from Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon this morning. Take a listen. She says, this week, the Civil Rights Division at the DOJ sent letters to all 50 states in the nation, including Washington, D.C., letting them know that allowing non-citizens to vote is illegal. Going forward, the Justice Department is going to prosecute violators to the fullest extent of the law, she says. Take a listen to this.
Did all 50 states get this letter in the last week?
They did. They got them yesterday, actually, and I saw some, hyperventilating from some, including I think Lieutenant Governor in Utah, who's also the election official, and she seemed to think she was being persecuted because Utah is refusing to hand over their voter rolls in our civil litigation. No, Deirdre, this is not aimed at you. It is for everybody, and in fact, many election officials are lawyers. They know this, but no one has been enforcing these parts of our laws, and we're enforcing them. We're enforcing them against people who voted illegally. There are criminal prosecutions ongoing in that regard, and we're going to enforce them against the people whose responsibility is to ensure that doesn't happen if they look the other way.
I'll tell you something here, folks. The Democrats, they absolutely hate what I'm about to share with you. This, as a matter of fact, we saw Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon. She's head of the Civil Rights Division at the DOJ. Why is that important? Civil rights, guess what? Your right to vote is categorically, technically, legally a civil right. The right to vote is a civil right. What does that mean? Why is that important here? Why is that worth remarking on? Well, when these blue states, when these sanctuary states, when these sanctuary cities, when these far-left Democrat, communist, radically progressive election officials, when they turn a blind eye or explicitly just allow illegal aliens to vote, guess what? They are violating my civil rights. Our civil right to vote is being violated every single time an illegal alien is allowed to vote. That is the angle for legal action that we are taking now going forward. Ingenious application of civil rights law. That is what the Trump administration is doing right now, going to legal war against all these blue states. Now, Harmeet Dillon goes on to say, election officials commit a federal crime when they knowingly allow non-citizens to vote. The Civil Rights Division sent notice letters to officials of all 50 states. She says this.
We've, at the DOJ, prosecuted numerous people in the last year and a half who have voted illegally. Just this week, there was an Australian national who voted in multiple elections in 2022 and 2024. And I've got other cases in the pipeline. So we just want to put a stop to it so that all Americans can feel confident that their vote isn't being canceled out. Pretty simple.
Simple.
That's right. And that Australian woman is Denise Natali Migliori, claiming U.S. citizenship so she could vote in federal elections in Louisiana, did so in 2022 and 2024. That's according to the case. But to your point, it is not just the person casting the vote if they're illegal. These are election officials. There is exposure for people who are elected officials. Why would they not, even just for their own sake, to avoid any prosecution, not be very aware of the exposure and comply to the T? You put them on notice, Harmeet.
Well, see, that's the knowingly part. Now, to be convicted of a crime, you have to knowingly allow something illegal to happen or look the other way. I think they don't want to know. That's one reason why they aren't cooperating with us at the Department of Justice, because we will be giving them back a list of people and say, we've run these numbers of suspected people who didn't have a citizenship record. And we believe these 20,000 people on your voter rolls are not citizens. You need to remove them. I think they don't want to do that. There's a history of that in states, and it's red states and blue states. I've been getting pushback and complaints and whining about it from Utah and from Arizona and from the usual suspects. Of course, they say it's bullying. It's law enforcement, and I actually hope that I don't have to prosecute anybody under this or other criminal statutes. But the reality is, people are going to cheat, people are going to do this, and we're here to catch them and put an end to it.
So Harmeet Dillon here says that she hopes she does not have to prosecute anyone. You know what? I hope she prosecutes everyone. I want to see 100,000. I want to see 1 million prosecutions for any single left-wing election official, I don't know, mayor, governor, whatever, anybody involved in this. Every single sanctuary city, sanctuary state official that has been involved in turning a blind eye to the rigging of our elections. I'll tell you something here, a little bit of a personal anecdote if I can digress. It was during the 2024 presidential election. I lived in Washington State, up in the far Northwest, and I went in to register to vote in Washington State. One of, in fact, might be the single bluest, most radically progressive communist state in the Union, Washington. You know how it is. I went in there to register to vote and gave me the piece of paper at the election office. I said, do you need to see my ID? The woman, she had purple hair and a nose piercing and 7 other piercings all over her face, sitting behind the counter. You know the type. She said, no, I don't need to see it. I said, really? She said, yeah, no, we don't check people's photo IDs when they're registering. I said, not even, I know you don't do it when I'm actually voting, but I pushed back on her. I said, I'm registering, not voting. I'm registering to vote. She said, no, we don't check it. Hey, I feel like my civil rights were violated because I'm thinking, if they don't even check people's IDs when you register to vote, not even when you vote, when you register, I'm thinking civil rights violation, because God knows how many people were registering 10 times or 100 times at different offices, or maybe even at the same office. Voting, God knows how many times. Who knows how many illegal aliens made it through the cracks there. I feel like my civil rights got violated on that day. I want all of these people arrested. This is insanity, folks. Now, officially, we are going on the offense. We are gutting the deep state. We are purging the voter rolls. We are filing lawsuits against all of these Democrat, communist, sanctuary states and sanctuary cities. And we are criminally, federally prosecuting anyone that allows any of this voter fraud to take place. As far as I'm concerned, this is what it looks like to finally put America first.